What I am about to tell you sounds crazy, but you have to listen to me. Your very lives depend on it. Now, we've had this conversation. What day is it?
Judgment Day. You just came in with the fresh recruit.
Edge of Tomorrow stands as one of those rare science fiction action films that manage to surprise audiences by blending blockbuster spectacle with an unusually clever narrative hook. Released in the mid-2010s, the film arrived without the massive pre-release hype usually associated with large studio science fiction projects, yet it steadily built its reputation through word of mouth. At its core, it is a war story set in a near future, where humanity faces near extinction at the hands of an overwhelming alien force. What immediately distinguishes the film is its tone. Serious but self-aware, intense yet often darkly humorous, allowing it to balance high-stakes action with moments of character-driven wit. The world of the film is shaped by a brutal and seemingly unwinnable conflict. Earth has been invaded by a mysterious alien species that moves with terrifying speed and coordination, pushing human forces to the brink of collapse. Governments across the globe unite into a single military alliance, throwing every available resource into a desperate last stand. Advanced mechanized combat suits become the symbol of humanity's resistance, transforming ordinary soldiers into heavily armed frontline fighters. Despite this technological leap, the war effort feels doomed, reinforcing a sense of inevitability that hangs over every battle scene. The central character begins his journey far from the heroic archetype usually associated with such stories. He is a public relations officer rather than a battle-hardened warrior, more comfortable behind microphones than on the front lines. Through a series of events driven by bureaucratic pressure and military authority, he is forced into combat against his will. This setup is crucial as it frames his transformation not as destiny, but as survival. He does not seek heroism, he is pushed into it, and that reluctance becomes one of the film's most compelling human elements. The narrative takes a sharp turn when the protagonist experiences something that defies logic and military science. After dying during his first chaotic battle, he awakens to find himself back at the beginning of the same day. At first, this phenomenon is treated with confusion and disbelief, both by the character and the audience. The repetition of events quickly establishes the film's signature mechanic, a time loop that resets every time the protagonist dies. Unlike traditional time travel stories, this loop is brutally grounded in trial and error, pain, and constant death. What makes this concept effective is how the film explores it practically rather than philosophically. Each reset is not an abstract idea, but a lived experience, forcing the character to relive the same moments repeatedly. Early loops are played with a sense of dark comedy as he struggles to understand what is happening and repeatedly fails in embarrassing or horrific ways. Over time, the repetition becomes exhausting, mirroring the psychological toll it takes on him. This gradual shift from humor to weariness adds emotional weight to the spectacle. A pivotal element of the story is the introduction of a legendary soldier whose reputation precedes her. Known for her battlefield prowess and tactical brilliance, she becomes both a mentor and an emotional anchor for the protagonist. Unlike him, she has already endured the horrors of war and understands the cost of survival. Their relationship evolves through countless loops, even though she remembers none of them. This asymmetry creates a unique dynamic where intimacy and trust exist only on one side, adding a quiet sense of tragedy beneath the action. Training sequences play a crucial role in the film, serving both narrative and thematic purposes. As the protagonist repeats the same day, he uses his accumulated knowledge to improve his combat skills. Each death becomes a lesson, each failure a data point. These sequences highlight the idea that mastery is not achieved through talent alone, but through relentless repetition and sacrifice. The film uses this progression to visually demonstrate character growth, transforming a cowardly officer into a capable and strategic fighter. The alien enemy is portrayed less as individual characters and more as an overwhelming force of nature. Their design emphasizes speed, unpredictability, and hive mind coordination, making them feel almost unstoppable. Rather than relying on dialogue or personality, the threat is communicated through movement and sheer lethality. This choice reinforces the film's tension, as victory never feels guaranteed, no matter how many times the protagonist repeats the day. As the story advances, the time loop mechanic evolves beyond a simple gimmick. The protagonist begins to realize that the loop has limits and consequences. Injuries that do not kill him persist, fatigue accumulates, and the emotional burden of constant death grows heavier. This gradual erosion of invincibility raises the stakes significantly. The audience understands that the loop is not a permanent safety net, and that every reset brings him closer to a final, irreversible outcome. The plot carefully balances large-scale battle scenes with quieter moments of reflection. Between explosive combat sequences, the film allows space for contemplation, regret, and determination. These moments prevent the story from becoming a non-stop action reel and instead ground it in human emotion. The protagonist's fear of dying gives way to a deeper fear of failing humanity, marking a clear shift in motivation. From a thematic standpoint, Edge of Tomorrow explores the idea of choice within inevitability. The protagonist cannot escape the day, but he can choose how to live it. This reframing turns the time loop from a curse into a tool, one that demands responsibility. The film suggests that progress is built on repeated failure, a message that resonates beyond its science fiction setting. The supporting cast, though not as deeply explored as the leads, contributes to the sense of a lived-in military world. Fellow soldiers range from hardened veterans to terrified recruits, each reacting differently to the relentless alien threat. Their limited screen time is often punctuated by repeated deaths across loops, reinforcing the brutality of the war and the emotional detachment the protagonist is forced to adopt in order to move forward. Visually, the film emphasizes realism within its futuristic setting. The mechanized combat suits feel heavy and industrial, rather than sleek and invincible. Battlefields are muddy, chaotic, and disorienting, reflecting the confusion of real warfare. This grounded aesthetic helps sell the more fantastical elements of the story, making the time loop feel like an extension of an already harsh reality rather than a whimsical twist. The pacing of the film is carefully structured around repetition without becoming monotonous. Each loop introduces small variations, new strategies, or unexpected complications. This constant evolution keeps the audience engaged while reinforcing the central concept. By the time the story reaches its later stages, the repeated events feel familiar yet tense, as subtle changes can mean the difference between progress and catastrophe. As the protagonist uncovers more about the nature of the time loop and the alien hierarchy controlling it, the story shifts toward a more conventional mission-driven narrative. However, the earlier groundwork ensures that this transition feels earned rather than abrupt. The final objective is not just about defeating the enemy, but about ending the cycle of death and repetition that has defined his existence. Emotionally, the film reaches its strongest moments in the quiet acknowledgement of loss. The protagonist carries memories of relationships that technically never happened, victories no one else remembers, and sacrifices that reset with each death. This emotional isolation becomes one of the film's most poignant elements, underscoring the cost of being the only one who remembers. The conclusion of the story aims to provide both spectacle and closure. The final battle brings together everything the protagonist has learned across countless loops, emphasizing preparation, teamwork, and timing. While the ending leans toward optimism, it does not erase the weight of what came before. The sense of relief is tempered by an understanding of how much was endured to reach that point. Edge of Tomorrow ultimately succeeds because it respects its audience's intelligence. It trusts viewers to follow a complex structure without excessive exposition and allows its characters to evolve through action rather than explanation. The film's blend of science fiction, action, and dark humor creates an experience that feels both entertaining and thoughtfully constructed. Over time, the film has gained recognition as a standout example of modern science fiction cinema. Its willingness to take narrative risks within a mainstream framework sets it apart from more formulaic entries in the genre. The time loop mechanic, while not entirely new, is used with enough creativity and emotional depth to feel fresh and impactful. The lasting appeal of Edge of Tomorrow lies in its exploration of perseverance. It presents failure not as an endpoint, but as a necessary step toward growth. Through relentless repetition, the protagonist earns his transformation, making his eventual success feel deserved rather than predetermined. This message, wrapped in explosive action and imaginative storytelling, ensures the film's place as a memorable and influential entry in contemporary science fiction,